Happy Friday, sixth graders! You made it through the first week after spring break, and you did a fantastic job. Bravo! Good for you. Mighty proud of y'all. And today's going to be the last lesson on not just the fall of the Roman Empire, but the Roman Empire. Next week, we're going to do something weird. We're going to jump back earlier in time and start doing Greece because of the whole setup with the start of distance learning and the uncertainty of how much time it was going to be. I initially set up Rome because I wasn't sure if we'd get to it in time, and I wanted to at least cover it in what I thought was going to be a couple weeks. But it seems it's going to be a while, so we're going to be doing Greece next. And remember, Greece actually comes before Rome. It still will be a fun unit. But let's wrap up Rome, shall we? Today we're going to look at the effects that the fall of Rome had on Western and Eastern Europe. The legacy of the fall. So what happened in the West? Germanic tribes that basically weakened Rome, Western Rome, in the many conflicts over the few hundred years leading up to the eventual fall in 476 CE, are now left to carve up what used to be the Western Roman Empire. And we're going to see that they're going to start setting up different kingdoms throughout much of this territory. And these kingdoms will eventually evolve into what we today call the nations of Europe. For example, the Visigoths, that kingdom will eventually start forming into what we today call present-day Spain and present-day Portugal. We're going to see that the Franks are going to take over the area that the Romans called Gaul, and that's why we call it France. It comes from the Franks, the tribe that took control of them. The Anglo-Saxons are going to be the people who will eventually establish the nation of England. The Ostrogoths will control much of the Italian peninsula and eventually will split into many different city-states, but much of what we today know as Italian culture will have its roots with the Ostrogoths. The Vandals, those people who vandalized Europe, take control of much of North Africa. So if we look today, we can see many of the nations that are in Europe have their roots with the people who started taking over. If you look even here, part of France and part of England, the people are called the Bretons. Yeah, what do we call England today? Britain. Hey. So, but as you can see, the Eastern Empire still remains pretty much untouched. We'll get to them in a bit. What was life like in Western Europe after the fall of the empire? What happened to all those advancements in Roman culture with republican ideals and the 12 tables of law and their aqueducts and all their different innovations, all the great writings that the Romans brought forward to the world and also continued from the ancient Greeks? Well, it's pretty much going to fall to disrepair. Many of the cities of the Romans will be abandoned as people move more and more into the countryside, as people become more and more agriculturally based and work as peasants for really wealthy elites who kind of control the countryside. We'll see that the evolution, the building of castles and stuff like that in the feudal system will arise. So the need for large cities is going to start to fall apart, and many of those Roman cities will just fall to disrepair. Archaeologists still today, comb through trying to find out more about Roman culture through those ruins that were left for hundreds of years. The language, though, of the Romans will still continue to be used, namely in the Catholic Church, which is going to become the dominant force in Europe. And in order to be part of the church, you had to be well educated, and also by those who were the wealthy elites who eventually will become royalty in different European areas that will become European nation states. Those who are those elites in Spain and Britain and France and different Germanic states like Prussia, they will use Latin and learn Latin. But they'll also, we're going to see that other languages evolve, especially from the common people who live in these areas out of Latin. These Romance languages are what are spoken in these areas today, like French, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, among others. Some of the innovations of the Romans, like their aqueducts and their sewers, will continue to be used even after the fall. Others will fall to disrepair. There are some, especially those that go into the city of Rome itself, that still are working today. After the fall of Rome, from 476 CE to about, I don't know, the 1450s of CE, for almost 1,000 years, Rome is in a period called, sometimes referred to as the medieval period, sometimes referred to as the Middle Ages, between the Roman Empire and the Renaissance, but it's also referred to as the Dark Ages. And that doesn't sound too nice or promising. Why is it referred to as the Dark Ages? Well, all the knowledge and advancements that were brought forth in ancient Rome are kind of extinguished. The light of knowledge from the Greeks, from the Romans, all their advancements in government and literature, science, most of them are forgotten. They're lost. Only a small group of people control and know of that knowledge in Western Europe. In Eastern Europe and the Byzantines, they still know it, and throughout much of the Middle East and the Muslim world, they still know it. But in Western Europe, that knowledge is held by a small group of people, the church and the wealthy elites. Most of the people living in Europe are illiterate. They'll live as peasants during this time period. Their average lifespan will be, in early 30s. During this time period, if you're living in Western Europe, you are dealing with constant war, plague, diseases sweeping through, like the bubonic plague that kill 25% of the population. Famine, food shortages are very common throughout the next few hundred years, and it's really a dark time. The one place in Western Europe that you could go to where you could still find light and knowledge and wealth was in the Roman Catholic Church. One of the legacies of the Roman Empire is that the church in Rome will become the dominant force throughout Western Europe, and its version of Christianity will spread through those nations and will eventually be spread through much of the world. One of the reasons why Christianity remains the dominant religion of the world today. As we look at later on in the history of the Middle Ages, we'll see how powerful the church will be as an institution in Western Europe. If you look at this painting, it depicts some of the horror that was in Western Europe during that time period. War going on, people dying of disease, famine, king laying dead. There's anarchy, no real rule or government. It was definitely a dark time in Western Europe. However, in Eastern Europe, things are pretty light. Eastern Europe, the Eastern Roman Empire is pretty much going to remain intact, and most historians refer to the Eastern Roman Empire after the fall of the West as the Byzantine Empire, coming from that the name of the place where Constantinople was established, Byzantium, and the people who continue that culture. And in many ways, they will still continue many aspects of Roman culture, Roman law, government, ideas, Roman ideas on faith, philosophy. All those things will continue in the eastern half of the empire. And the Byzantines will also make a number of advancements. There is a number of artwork that's seen as really exclusive to them, that really flourishes during that time period. Many different innovations will grow in the Byzantine Empire, as well as some marked increases in civil rights. These images here kind of capture those all in one thing. You see Justinian and his Empress Theodora, who really worked to expand the code of law, to put in more protections for people. The Justinian code of law is still used in many different parts of Europe today. Theodora, his empress, pushes to expand women's rights quite a bit, which was something that was trampled upon throughout the Roman Empire, if you recall. And women living in the Byzantine Empire had a lot more rights than women throughout all of Europe. You see here the Hagia Sophia, which is a famous, was a Greek Orthodox church, which was built in Constantinople with its famous blue dome. That type of dome and this technology is really exclusive to the Byzantines and their architecture. You can see with the minarets on the side of it that the Hagia Sophia is no longer a Christian church of the Greek Orthodox faith, but is now a Muslim mosque, as the Ottomans overthrew the Byzantines about 1,000 years after the fall of Rome in the year 1453. So that, in many ways, that part of the Roman Empire will continue for another 1,000 years, long after Rome is no longer Rome. So, question for you is, why is the time period after the fall of the Roman Empire often referred to as the Dark Ages in Western Europe? Write down your answer. I can't wait to read them. And I hope you and yours have a safe, healthy, and fantastically fun weekend. Get some rest. And I will see you on Monday for another marvelous week where we're going to go to ancient Greece. So long.